Hi guys, welcome to my Game Week 12 team selection video. Feels like ages since my last video with the international break, but it's good to be back with FPL and thinking about our teams again. Let's start with my Game Week 11 team review, so cast your minds back to before the international break and let's get into it. Here's my team on screen, as you can see, a slight green arrow up from 124k to 113k. 60 points in total. I think that was just above the average, so tiny green arrow. A lot of people did pretty well if they had other assets such as Joao Cancelo. He was the main one that I didn't have that really hauled. In terms of my team, let's start with City, as I've already mentioned. Cancelo, very happy that I played Diaz. I did consider benching him against City, against United, but I did play him in the end, which is good. Foden, 3 points. Obviously, just the appearance and the clean sheet. Could have easily scored. He hit the post, had a couple of chances in the first half, whipped in a couple of good crosses, but unfortunate not to get an attacking return. I'm definitely keeping him ahead of Everton, and they've got a really good fixture run. So, yeah, he's definitely one that I'm keeping. Gaeta, very good start from him in my team, 6 points. No save points, just a clean sheet and the appearance, but very decent. He's got a good run upcoming. And the other player that I was looking at in that position, if you remember, was Robert Sanchez, who obviously got -1 point and is suspended from this week. So, yeah, not in terms of keepers, we shouldn't judge them from one game, but Gaeta looking like the better option so far. The Chelsea boys, obviously Rudiger lost the clean sheet, but finally Havertz got a goal. I think that will be his swan song for my team. I think I'm going to take him out this week, as I'll get into later in the episode, but I'm not 100% certain. The Liverpool boys, obviously Trent doing really well. I think he had absolutely everything this game. Conceded 3, scored 1, assisted 1, yellow card, bonus points, just everything. And Salah, that's back-to-back games with an assist and the appearance points. Nothing else for him. So, I don't know. His numbers still look better than ever. So, I think we'll just put it down to an unlucky game for him. Liverpool still scored 2 goals at the end of the day, and he was heavily involved. So I fully expect him to be the same against Arsenal this week. In terms of Arsenal, Ben White did really well. Obviously, clean sheet and bonus points against Watford. Very good game for him, but I probably will be benching him this week against Liverpool away. It's not the best fixture. On to the Brentford lads. Now, God, these guys have been so unlucky ever since I've brought them into my team. Again, none more so than this week, where Mbeumo had a goal ruled out and Tony assisted. So it would have been an 8-point swing the other way. That would have probably taken me up until like maybe 50k, maybe at worst like 75k, that extra 8 points, potentially with bonuses as well. But obviously other people have them, so I can't be too angry about that. It wouldn't be has been as meteoric a rise as it perhaps would have been. But obviously, it is a bit frustrating. They're probably on their last chance saloon this week, as I will come on to later. And then Jamie Vardy, unfortunately, I think my patience has worn pretty thin with him. I've had him for 3 weeks in a row, and he's got me 4 points, 2 1-pointers and a 2-pointer. It's just not good enough. And with Chelsea this week, it's just not a brilliant fixture for him. I imagine he's very high up the list on a lot of our chopping blocks. He's got good fixtures after this week, but so do the other strikers that we're looking at, and I feel like my patience has worn pretty thin with Vardy. I think I'll be moving on from him. But let's get into the Game Week 12 and see who's available and who's out for this coming game week. So on screen here, I've got 8 players who are currently flagged on FPL. I also have another list of 8 players. There's a lot of injuries this week, or doubts and concerns, and of course suspensions as well. I don't know why. I think like the international break, there's been a lot of fixtures recently, and there's a lot of fixtures upcoming. So I expect that we're going to see a lot more people either get muscle injuries or yellow card suspensions, etc., just through the sheer amount of games upcoming. Thankfully, this lasts international break until like March or something, I believe, so we don't have to worry about international breaks anymore. But in terms of the players on screen, obviously we don't have all the concrete information yet because we haven't heard all managers speak before the deadline. But in terms of the managers that we did hear today, or people that we've heard from, I will try and clarify as much as possible of the players that we do know about. So in terms of the players on screen, I believe only Danny Ings' manager, Steven Gerrard, has spoken. Gerrard spoke obviously a lot about what sort of style he was going to bring to Villa. I don't actually think anyone asked about Ings, but we all assume he's still out. It's red flagged, so I assume he's out. In terms of the United boys, Pogba is suspended, but of course he picked up that injury on France duty, so he's going to be out for a while. Varane is still out, I believe, and Luke Shaw's currently 75% flagged with a head injury that he picked up over the international break, I believe. So he is one to listen out for tomorrow when Ole speaks. Then obviously we've got the two Chelsea boys. I believe Romelu Lukaku's still training on his own. I saw that on Twitter, but I'm not sure how reliable that is. So I'll have to wait for the press conference tomorrow, hear Tuchel speak. And then Mount obviously had a dental operation that kept him out of the England games in the international break. So I imagine it'll be another one to listen out for. In terms of the two Liverpool boys, we haven't heard Klopp speak, but we did get a bit of a press conference. Like, I don't know where it's come from. Maybe it's an embargoed one from early on in the week. But he was saying that Mane is in a little bit of pain, but he's been training with the team as normal. So Mane will be fit for the Arsenal game this weekend. Firmino will not be fit. He's out. There's a lot of rumours about like mid-December, whether he'll be back. Klopp's just said something along the lines of like, he's not back this week and it's looking better than it was, but we don't know how bad the initial sort of concern was for Bobby. I still think Jota is a really good pick, especially over Tsimikas, because we've been told that Robbo is sort of 50-50 for this weekend. They're going to make a last-minute decision on him. So in terms of the Jota versus Tsimikas, Bobby will definitely be out of the team longer than Robbo will. So if you've got either of them, keep them. And I mean Jota and Tsimikas, of course. If you've got either of them, keep them and probably play them this weekend. But if you're looking to bring them in, I would definitely to the side of Jota rather than to Tsimikas. In terms of other players, Hasenhüttl spoke earlier today, and he has confirmed that everyone is fit in the squad except for Jack Stevens. So obviously no one has Jack Stevens in FPL, so that's good. Livramento will play, so obviously everyone that was considering playing him versus Norwich, go ahead and do so. James Ward-Prowse is back, so he'll be in midfield. And Broja is an interesting one. He was mentioning, Hasenhüttl was mentioning about how his squad depth is better than ever. And obviously he's really pleased about that going into the Christmas schedule. Obviously, being an FPL manager, we're not that pleased about that because we like nailed players. But for the price, I think you could easily justify having Broja on your bench or even Armstrong on your bench. I mean, Armstrong's probably like a little bit too expensive to have on your bench, but I mean, if the lack of premiums is still a thing at the moment, like it is with most teams, if you've got Armstrong on the bench, he's an easy one to bench. I made a thing on Twitter, and I also posted on the last video, the Gameweek 11 team selection, about how good Arsenal and Southampton's fixtures are in terms of rotating. So I, for my team, have Livramento and Ben White rotating as my fourth defender slot in a 4-4-2. But if you guys wanted to go elsewhere and get like Broja and if you want to go with Broja and White or Broja and Emil Smith-Rowe or sort of anyone really of the two, just having one of each and rotating them every other game or like when the fixtures are good, then they do rotate really well and they're not super expensive. So that could be a good thing to look at. In terms of West Ham, Ogbonna is going to be out for a while, I believe. And Declan Rice was unwell over the course of the international break. Now, I think he'll be back. Obviously, just listen out to what Moyes says tomorrow. But if he's not back, that does seriously hamper the West Ham side. I don't know exactly how they're going to line up. I imagine Dawson will come in for Ogbonna. And if Declan Rice is out, I imagine obviously it will be Souček and Noble. I don't think Kral is trusted too much. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, it is only Wolves this week. And then Declan Rice will have like a whole week to recover before the City game next week. In terms of City, there is Grealish, who's 75% flagged. think he just got a knock on England duty or something. Maybe they let him go early. I'm pretty sure. So in terms of City, that probably means that Foden's guaranteed to start this week, which is good because obviously a lot of people have Foden. And with the important games coming up, there was a chance possibly that he could have been rested this week as they play PSG midweek and they play West Ham next weekend. So I guess there was an outside chance that Foden could have been benched. But if Grealish is a slight doubt with a knock, I reckon they'll go Foden. And then if you, like me, brought in Gaeta or you're considering Gaeta, just be a little bit wary because Joaquin Anderson is flagged. I believe he picked up a knock over the international break as well. So listen to what Vieira says tomorrow. The same for Tielemans. I don't know if you have Tielemans. I think a few Leicester players are flagged, actually. Tielemans, Barnes. I think that's it. So again, just like be careful with Leicester. Listen to what Rodgers says tomorrow. Obviously, they're playing Chelsea, so I wouldn't recommend playing any Leicester players unless you're keeping Vardy. And then the last guy is Robert Sanchez, who, of course, is suspended. So, yeah, that's a lot. Sorry that took a while to get through, but obviously if you guys have any of these players or you have the replacements for any of these players, then listen out for what managers say. Obviously, some spoke today and the rest will speak tomorrow. Let's move on to my transfer targets. So finally, after talking about so many injuries, we finally get to talk about players that I'm actually looking at bringing in. Now, the first group that I'd like to talk about is Spurs. Spurs have a very poor XG. I think they're something like 15th in the league for expected goals. So it's really poor, their attacking stats. Obviously, new manager under Conte. They haven't had too long to adapt to his style, and a lot of the players that he will be playing went on their international duty over the international break. So he hasn't had that long to work with all the players. But if you look at the fixtures that they've got, the next 4 fixtures, these teams are some of the worst for XG conceded. So obviously Leeds, Burnley and Norwich are all in the bottom 5, I believe. And then in terms of Brentford, they did have a really good XG to start the season, but recently it's been pretty poor with the injury to Raya. I believe that Zanka, who is Matthias Jorgensen, I believe he's also flagged. I believe that Ayer, whatever his name is, Ayer, the guy that they signed from Celtic, I believe he's flagged as well. So essentially what I'm saying is that, yeah, these teams are definitely teams to target. In terms of like 4 fixtures in a row, apart from maybe either Newcastle or Watford, these 4 are probably the best fixtures. If you could just write them all down and to have 3 of them at home as well is just brilliant. And I think Spurs assets should be targeted. In terms of for my team, the main 2 are Son and Kane. As you can see, Son has had a much more prolific season than Kane so far and is cheaper and more owned. However, I think it comes down to preference in terms of how it's going to fit in your structure. Now, for me, I can get Son or Kane. So I just start that I have no preference in the structure at the moment. The only thing is that I don't want to keep Vardy and I don't want to keep Havertz. So I want to take out 2 players and I want 2 new players. So essentially, I have a pretty high budget because I have 4.1 million in the bank to go to Son and a striker or Kane and a midfielder. So in terms of the debate there, it just depends on who the other option is. And at the moment, I'm leaning towards Kane and Jota over Son and Wilson. In my opinion, I just think Jota, when Firmino is out, and in that Liverpool attack, the best attack in the league in terms of expected data, Jota at 7.5 million, when he's nailed in that Liverpool team, he could be priced 10 million and people would still pay that. He has the marginally less stats than Salah and Mane, and he's 4 or 4.5 million cheaper than both of them. It was just incredible. I think that sort of value. So I'm definitely erring on the side of Kane and Jota at the moment, but I do think Son and another striker is definitely a good option if you're leaning that way. In terms of the third Liverpool spot, now before we'd heard about how Robertson's injury was, this was going to be quite a key contentious point for this week. with Tsimikas potentially getting 3 to 4 weeks if it were a proper hamstring injury. But we've heard recently that it's actually not as serious as expected. So if Tsimikas does play, I expect him only to play this weekend, and Robertson to sort of get his place back next weekend. In terms of, I'm not saying that like Tsimikas or Jota, I'm not deciding which one of them should play or which one shouldn't play in terms of form or quality. But I will say that even though Tsimikas has looked very good this season and Robbo perhaps hasn't looked his usual self, Klopp is very loyal to his players, and I believe that he trusts Robertson, and he has made his views on Robertson very clear that he thinks he's the best left back in the world. So I imagine that Robertson will play. If you have Tsimikas, by all means, play him this weekend. 13.1% ownership. I fully expect him to be able to play this weekend. And then obviously, if he doesn't play in the future, that's fine. You haven't brought him in, so you haven't wasted a transfer or anything. But if I were to bring in just one of them this weekend, it would be Diogo Jota at 7.5 million, 46 points so far. And that XG and XA combined is such a good bargain for me. In terms of the final player that I'm sort of looking to move on, probably not this week because I have other fires, as I said, with Havertz and Vardy. This man, Mbeumo, is really on last chance saloon. 32 points isn't terrible. 5.6 million, really good. But looking at his XG per 90, 0.41, that's a fantastic stat. And at 4.5% ownership, he could have been an amazing differential. However, the last 2 games, he's just looked really poor in terms of underperforming. Now, these are his season-long stats. Now, in terms of the XA, obviously these stats are all incremental, so they add on to how you've played over the course of the season. So looking at that, like even though his XA is minus 0.84, that doesn't mean that he should have 0.84 assists, because you can't get 0.84 of an assist. And of course, every time you create a chance, that could be 0.02 of a expected assist. So in terms of that, it doesn't make sense. But in terms of the expected goals, being 1.84 down on your statistics by underperforming by that much is really, really unlucky. The amount of times we said, "Oh, Mbeumo just hits the post, he's got so unlucky," like that is definitely the case. And I think that even though he has decent upcoming fixtures, like Everton at home have not looked secure at all. Spurs before Conte, like when Nuno just came in at the start, looked decent defensively, and then they had a woeful run. Conceded 3 to Palace, 3 to Arsenal, something along those lines, and just looked really poor. But they look better defensively under Conte, and then Leeds have sort of turned it around a little bit recently, looking a bit better defensively as well. So I don't know. I think this Newcastle away game could be pretty key for Mbeumo in my team, especially in terms of the replacements. Now, as you can see, Mbeumo had 32 points. So for reference, that's a lot less than Smith Rowe and Gallagher. They all started at the same price point, and as you can see, these two have massively overtaken what Mbeumo is performing at in terms of stats. So even though Smith Rowe's XG and XA are worse, he's massively overperforming, which is the contrast to Mbeumo, who's massively underperforming. And if you look at Gallagher, he's overperforming, but his stats are better than Mbeumo's, like his baseline stats. Like he has better XG, better XA. So in terms of the players to look out for, I would definitely be considering moving Mbeumo onto one of these lads in the future. I could do the Smith Rowe one, as I was saying. Smith Rowe links really well with Livramento in terms of their fixtures, but then obviously that would involve selling Ben White later down the road, and I don't know if I want to do that. Whereas Gallagher has a pretty good run, all things considered, and Crystal Palace have been playing very well, and obviously Gallagher has the better underlying stats. So I think Gallagher could be the way to go next week, but obviously a lot will depend on how Mbeumo does versus Newcastle this week. In terms of my actual transfer plans this week, unfortunately, I will be taking a -4. These 2 on screen are my key transfers, I think. unfortunately, without the injury to Raya, I actually wouldn't have had to take a -4. So when I was initially like planning these moves after my wild card, or sort of like seeing how I could get to either Son or Kane from Havertz and Vardy, like this original transfer would have been for free. But obviously, like I've had to make a keeper change, and so far, I mean, it's been okay. Gaeta's done very well for me. So sometimes you just have to look at that and think, okay, that was unfortunate, and see how your moves differ. Originally, I was looking at Son and Kane from this week, but I don't think I want to be too bold on Spurs. So I think I will go for Kane and Jota over Son and Wilson. I think these two will be my moves. And let's get into captaincy for this weekend. So here are the 3 captaincy options for my team. Obviously, if you have Son or Ronaldo, or I don't really know who else. Maybe who's playing Norwich this week? Oh, it's Southampton. No, I'd probably look at these 3 on screen, or if you have Son or Ronaldo, looking at those 2 instead of Kane and Foden. But yeah, in terms of me, I think Salah again. I know it's incredibly boring, and I do it every single week. But again, just looking at the stats on screen, he's got the best goal threat. He's got the best assist threat. His team scores or creates the most expected chance per 90, and they're playing against the team with out of these 3 that have the worst expected goals conceded per 90. Now, I know a lot of people were saying how Arsenal's defence has improved in the last few games. For example, Simply FPL was, I watched his video earlier saying that he's not considering captaining Salah. And I put a comment on his post saying that in terms of Arsenal's XG, obviously it has improved, don't get me wrong, from the first few games of the season when they were absolutely awful, conceding 2 to Chelsea, 5 to City. They were terrible at the start. But you have to take in the fixtures into context. And I posted a comment saying that the best team in terms of expected goals that they've played against is Crystal Palace. In their last 7 games, they've played no one better than Crystal Palace in terms of expected goals. And Crystal Palace are 10th in the league for expected goals. So you have to see that the stats are slightly skewed. They're now playing away at Anfield to a team that have the best expected goals per 90. So this will be a massive test of how far this Arsenal defence has come. I'm all for going for a differential captain, and I think Foden is a really good shout. If we get confirmation that Grealish is out, then I'm sure we'll see a lot of people captaining Foden because he's basically guaranteed to start either up front or on the left. And again, if people want to punt on Kane, who's to say you couldn't? He scored 7 goals in the league over the course of the international break. I know they're against poor sides, but confidence breeds confidence, and with confidence, Kane will score more goals. Conte's already spoken about how he wants Kane to be in the box, and as you saw against Albania and San Marino, he was in the box a lot. And Leeds have always shown that they're really poor defending any sort of set piece or any sort of cross into the box. So I do think Kane is a really good shout. But for me, I think I'm going to go boring, and I'm going to go with Mo Salah. So here you can see this is my team for game week 12. Assuming that I do the moves for Kane and Jota, this will be my team. So I've got Gaeta looking for a clean sheet and some saves against Burnley. Finally starting Livramento. About time, isn't it? Norwich away. Good to have him for that one. Only 1 Chelsea defender versus Leicester. I think that's more than okay. I'm not saying that Leicester will score. I think they've been pretty poor. But obviously, having 2 Chelsea defenders versus Leicester is a little bit risky. Everton have looked atrocious at home this season. I think they've only scored 4 goals in the last 5 games or something. I think Simply FBL said that in his video. So, yeah, that's atrocious. And obviously, they're playing against the statistically best defence in the league. So, very happy to have Diaz. Then Liverpool triple up versus Arsenal. A lot riding on that one game. Obviously, being a Liverpool fan as well, that is going to be a pretty big part of my weekend, seeing how that game goes. But hopefully that goes well. Foden versus Everton could absolutely haul. And then finally, the Brentford boys against Newcastle. I mean, hopefully they get something this week. I feel that everyone's that's held them on for this sort of run that they've had against Norwich and whoever else it was. They just deserve something, just anything, like a jammy assist, jammy goal. I would take anything right now from either of them. And then obviously the main man, Harry Kane, coming in. He'll take the vice captain's armband. Not that you get one for being vice captain. I don't know why I said that. And then the bench cover, not brilliant this week. Brownhill is at home to Palace. I'll probably put him at bench slot number 1. Then White away at Liverpool, I'll probably put him 2. And Davis probably won't get any minutes for Villa. But even there's a slight chance he could with Danny Ings out injured. So yeah, he'll be 3. So finally, good luck everyone for Game Week 12. If you like the video, please leave a thumbs up. Comment if you've got any questions, suggestions, etc. And please subscribe to my channel if you'd like regular notifications. Obviously, at me on Twitter if you've got any interesting information or more pressing questions that you'd like to be answered. But yeah, apart from that, have a good week, and I hope your weekend, FPL-wise, goes very well.